Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. Chapter 22. The Visit. Ashby Park was certainly a very delightful residence. The mansion was stately without, commodious and elegant within. The park was spacious and beautiful, chiefly on account of its magnificent old trees, its stately herds of deer, its broad sheet of water, and the ancient woods that stretched beyond it, for there was no broken ground to give variety to the landscape, and but very little of that undulating swell which adds so greatly to the charm of park scenery. And so this was the place Rosalie Murray had so longed to call her own, that she must have a share of it, on whatever terms it might be offered, whatever price was to be paid for the title of mistress, and whoever was to be her partner in the honour and bliss of such a possession. Well, I am not disposed to censure her now. She received me very kindly, and, though I was a poor clergyman's daughter, a governess, and a schoolmistress, she welcomed me with unaffected pleasure to her home, and, what surprised me rather, took some pains to make my visit agreeable. I could see, it is true, that she expected me to be greatly struck with the magnificence that surrounded her, and, I confess, I was rather annoyed at her evident efforts to reassure me, and prevent me from being overwhelmed by so much grandeur, too much awed at the idea of encountering her husband and mother-in-law, or too much ashamed of my own humble appearance. I was not ashamed of it at all, for, though plain, I had taken good care not to look shabby or mean, and should have been pretty considerably at my ease, if my condescending hostess had not taken such manifest pains to make me so. And, as for the magnificence that surrounded her, nothing that met my eyes struck me or affected me half so much as her own altered appearance. Whether from the influence of fashionable dissipation, or some other evil, a space of little more than 12 months had had the effect that might be expected from as many years, in reducing the plumpness of her form, the freshness of her complexion, the vivacity of her movements, and the exuberance of her spirits. I wished to know if she was unhappy, but I felt it was not my province to inquire. I might endeavour to win her confidence, but if she chose to conceal her matrimonial cares from me, I would trouble her with no obtrusive questions. I, therefore, at first, confined myself to a few general inquiries about her health and welfare, and a few commendations on the beauty of the park, and of the little girl that should have been a boy, a small delicate infant of 7 or 8 weeks old, whom its mother seemed to regard with no remarkable degree of interest or affection, though full as much as I expected her to show. Shortly after my arrival, she commissioned her maid to conduct me to my room, and see that I had everything I wanted. It was a small, unpretending, but sufficiently comfortable apartment. When I descended thence, having divested myself of all travelling encumbrances, and arranged my toilet with due consideration for the feelings of my lady hostess, she conducted me herself to the room I was to occupy when I chose to be alone, or when she was engaged with visitors, or obliged to be with her mother-in-law, or otherwise prevented, as she said, from enjoying the pleasure of my society. It was a quiet, tidy little sitting-room, and I was not sorry to be provided with such a harbour of refuge. "And some time," said she, "I will show you the library. I never examined its shelves, but I dare say it is full of wise books, and you may go and burrow among them whenever you please. And now you shall have some tea. It will soon be dinner time, but I thought, as you are accustomed to dine at 1, you would perhaps like better to have a cup of tea about this time, and to dine when we lunch. And then, you know, you can have your tea in this room, and that will save you from having to dine with Lady Ashby and Sir Thomas, which would be rather awkward. At least, not awkward, but rather, you know what I mean. I thought you mightn't like it so well, especially as we may have other ladies and gentlemen to dine with us occasionally." "Certainly," said I would much rather have it as you say, and, if you have no objection, I should prefer having all my meals in this room." "Why so?" "Because, I imagine, it would be more agreeable to Lady Ashby and Sir Thomas." "Nothing of the kind." "At any rate it would be more agreeable to me." She made some faint objections, but soon conceded, and I could see that the proposal was a considerable relief to her. "Now, come into the drawing-room," said she. "There's the dressing-bell, but I won't go yet. It's no use dressing when there's no one to see you, and I want to have a little discourse." The drawing-room was certainly an imposing apartment, and very elegantly furnished, but I saw its young mistress glance towards me as we entered, as if to notice how I was impressed by the spectacle, and accordingly I determined to preserve an aspect of stony indifference, as if I saw nothing at all remarkable. But this was only for a moment. Immediately conscience whispered, why should I disappoint her to save my pride? No, rather let me sacrifice my pride to give her a little innocent gratification. And I honestly looked round, and told her it was a noble room, and very tastefully furnished. She said little, but I saw she was pleased. She showed me her fat French poodle, that lay curled up on a silk cushion, and the 2 fine Italian paintings, which, however, she would not give me time to examine, but, saying I must look at them some other day, insisted upon my admiring the little jewelled watch she had purchased in Geneva, and then she took me round the room to point out sundry articles of vertu she had brought from Italy, an elegant little timepiece, and several busts, small graceful figures, and vases, all beautifully carved in white marble. She spoke of these with animation, and heard my admiring comments with a smile of pleasure, that soon, however, vanished, and was followed by a melancholy sigh, as if in consideration of the insufficiency of all such baubles to the happiness of the human heart, and their woeful inability to supply its insatiate demands. Then, stretching herself upon a couch, she motioned me to a capacious easy-chair that stood opposite, not before the fire, but before a wide open window, for it was summer, be it remembered, a sweet warm evening in the latter half of June. I sat for a moment in silence, enjoying the still, pure air, and the delightful prospect of the park that lay before me, rich in verdure and foliage, and basking in yellow sunshine, relieved by the long shadows of declining day. But I must take advantage of this pause. I had inquiries to make, and, like the substance of a lady's postscript, the most important must come last. So I began with asking after Mr. and Mrs. Murray, and Miss Matilda and the young gentlemen,